Yep.
Welcome everyone, and welcome this evening, almost this evening, I guess, to the November 21st public meeting of the Victoria Esquimalt Police Board. I'd like to convene the meeting tonight, and just note for the folks who are watching that my co-chair. Thanks very much for that. Getting the same feedback that we get usually. My co-chair, Mayor Desjardins from Esquimalt, is away, and so I'm stepping in to chair these meetings. First thing that we always do, of course, when we gather anywhere here in the city of Victoria or the township of Esquimalt, is to take a moment, of course, to reflect on the privilege of being able to do our work and raise our families here in these territories. I ask always whether there's any member of the board who would like to provide a land and seas acknowledgement. Paul, if Director Farrow would like to offer that, would be welcome.
Thank you, Chair. We're here today at a meeting at the Victoria Police Department headquarters that's located on the traditional territories of the Algonquin peoples, today known as the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations. We certainly extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, learn, and work on this territory. I say thanks.
Thanks very much, Paul. I'm very appreciative of any opportunity for us to declare our awareness and recognition of the territories in which we all do our work and live our lives. Appreciate that. First up, always is a consideration of whether or not we need to have any declarations of conflict of interest. The board looking at this today who needs to express any concerns around conflict of interest. Seeing none today, that's great to hear. The next thing we have is the adoption of the public agenda. That agenda has been published and circulated. Yes, I don't know if you're a director. I'm stumbling. Are you a director, a member, a board member? Call. How's that? Is that your title? Board member call. There you go.
Elizabeth would do.
Okay.
I'll answer to that.
For the record, Elizabeth Cull is moving. Is there a second?
I would just like to suggest that
Yes.
she's a very small addition to the agenda under new business. In light of the story that we saw last week from the Saanich Police Department about the 30 by 2030, the women in the
yes.
police force. I'd just like to hear what our strategy is with respect to increasing the number of women officers on the force.
All right, so I'm adding women in police as item B under new business. Usually I would ask for a motion to amend the agenda, so I will do that. That's been proposed as an amendment to the agenda. It has been moved. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Paul. Anyone have any concerns with that? Seeing none, I would call for a vote on the amendment to the agenda. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? It is unanimous. So we then do have the consideration of an amended agenda before the board. Any further questions, comments, amendments, or changes? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that addition. Now that we have the public agenda adopted, the next thing up are the minutes for the last meeting, which were in October 17th. That has also been circulated with the agenda. Are there any corrections, concerns, amendments, errors, omissions, anything that needs to be changed in the minutes for October 17th? Seeing none, someone like to move adoption of the minutes. Thank you, Michaela, seconded by Paul. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is also unanimous. Board co-chairs update fairly briefly. As I mentioned, my co-chair is away this month, so I have had an opportunity to have a fairly lengthy discussion on the agenda with the able assistance, of course, Colette, without whom we could do nothing. And so that has brought us here today. And the only thing that I would add to this actually is that earlier today, the board for the first time selected a person to fill the position of vice chair. A very important new position that is going to allow the board to be a bit more nimble on its feet and to ensure that we always have someone who's prepared to speak in the absence of the chairs and to be able to carry on the business of the board when necessary. That is indeed Michaela Hayes, who was selected by her peers. Thank you, Michaela, for stepping up. Look forward to working with you in all of the things that we're doing for us. That will take us on to committees updates, and so we'll look first to governance. Anything you'd like to report out, Paul?
There's a lot of work in progress, Chair. Certainly, our big project at hand is reviewing all of the current board manual. There is quite a lot of documents in that. That is the number one project for the governance committee. But at the previous meetings, we want to make sure that training for board members is really up to up to speed. The province has rolled out some new training through the Watson Learning Academy that several members of the board have already participated in. I just received my certificate of completion. So there is actually a whole host of training, applicable training that I know that the many members of our board are going to be rolled out taking in 2024. So that's good. Kind of tied into that is that to ensure that we can actually get all the work done and that we don't miss anything. We've implemented a forward calendar to ensure that we're actually planning and conducting everything when we need to. And that's, I want to thank Colette for helping us with that. There's a lot of timed actions that we need to do, and this is going to help us plan and be more efficient and effective. And I'm going to leave the report for the BC Association of Police Board Resolutions, so I believe that's coming up later. And that'll be my brief report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Any questions or comments on the governance? Seeing none, I think you do usually take a motion to receive the reports from minutes. We don't. Very good. Then we just accept that as given, no questions asked. And let's move on to the finance committee. Elizabeth?
We had, we're in the middle of our budget process right now. We gave a fairly extensive presentation to the two municipal councils in a joint meeting with most of our board being present. There was all I can say, it was a really good discussion, lots of great questions asked. We're now doing some follow-up individually with the municipalities to see if there are more things, more information that they want, but this discussion will continue for a while. One of the things that the Finance Committee is committed to doing this year is making sure that by the time we get to the councils making their final decisions on budgets, that we have every opportunity to discuss how we get there, how we get to the same place, hopefully, with us all agreeing and supporting this budget. Apart from that, the financial report, the overtime report are coming up on the agenda later, so I don't really have anything more from the finance.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Elizabeth? Seeing none, there we go. Thanks very much for all of that work. Moving on then to HR.
Thank you, Chair. It's a quiet little bit for the HR front, but I'm again very excited to have Chris Gossage on the executive to work with, and I think next meeting we might have a few more items on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments for Tim? On to board member engagement update. This is an opportunity for board members to tell us a little bit about anything they've been doing over and above all the amazing work they do directly with the board. Anyone like to offer anything specific? Any activities, events? Go ahead, Paul.
Last Tuesday night, I attended via Zoom the Restorative Justice Victoria's annual general meeting. We were invited. The board was invited by that organization, who we have a strong working relationship with. For our viewing audience, Restorative Justice is a nonprofit community-based organization that provides restorative justice services in the Greater Victoria area. It was established in 2002, and it's been nationally recognized as a leader in the field of restorative justice. Our chair and Mayor of Victoria provided a greetings at the beginning of the meeting. It was their annual general meeting. New board was elected and also had an opportunity to meet their new executive director, Jack Foster. In that meeting, and we also get to hear some of the great work that they're doing. I'm very impressed with a very lean organization in the sense of their funding and the great work that they do. So I was very honored to participate in that. So that would be it, my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Yes, I did have a chance to join that meeting as well. It is a very inspirational group of people. And very few people with a very lean budget. And the impact, I think, of their work is quite striking on the individuals with whom they work. So all kudos to their ongoing commitment, and they've done so much with so little. It's really quite remarkable. Keller?
A few weeks ago, myself along with Paul and maybe some other board members, sorry if I'm missing you, attended the swearing in of Daisy, the new occupational stress intervention dog. That is officially the cutest member of the Victoria Esquimalt Police Department. I thought it was really fantastic, and I really value the innovative approach to supporting officers' mental health and offering stress relief.
Much for that, yes, we now have to have a bit of a contest for the cutest member of this. Thanks
I
for
will
that.
run that contest.
You will run that contest, very good. Thank you. Anyone else like to report on any other activities outside their regular duties? Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, outside regular duties.
Oh, no, regular duties is good.
I am humbled to be attending the Watson training. It is absolutely invaluable. I've been on the board since May. It's been a very, very steep learning curve, so I'm very grateful for this opportunity to sit with other board members from around the province and talk about the important work that we do. And I'm also happy to report that most of the items we are speaking about are either in place in this board or currently underway to being implemented.
The other board members like to chime in? Hey, thank you for all of that. It's great to see everyone working above and beyond. That's unspeculated. Next up is the BC Association of Police Board Directors update. I believe Michaela, this is you.
Yeah, thanks very much. We had a meeting a couple of days ago. There's a lot of discussion about econ, so I think some of that will be coming forward. Our primary focus right now is on strategic planning. So the BCAPB received a $50,000 grant from the provincial government to do its own strategic planning. And we've engaged Watson to work on a strategic plan from us. So we will have a full day on January 12th working with Watson. And in advance of that, there'll be a survey that comes to the board. My understanding right now, although there's some emailing back and forth happening, is that it's to be a survey answered by the board, not by individual members about priorities for BCAPB. So we'll all be able to have a voice at that table, and that will be coming forward shortly with a deadline of December 15th. So hopefully we'll be able to make some time for that at a committee's meeting. A couple other notes is that Katie Charlton indicated in our BCAPB meeting that she is actively looking for any feedback on the Watson training program. So if you have any feedback, anything that you'd like to share, of course you can share it directly with Watson, but Katie is looking for that. And I have confirmed with her that she is hoping that people will reach out to her, and everybody's got her email, I think, but let me know if you don't, if you have anything that you want to share. And next week we have the BCAPB executive will be attending a phase 1 update on the policing and public safety modernization initiative. And I will tell you what that means after that.
That sounds really quite exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing that. Thank you. Any questions for Michaela? Thank you very much for that service. Next, we're up to the Chief Constable's update. Chief?
Yeah, sure, perfect. Thank you, Chair. So you'll see my activity report, which covers September, October, and November. Starting on page 19 of 37 in your package. I'll just summarize a few things. I started my fall updates, chief's updates internally with all staff, and so I ended up doing 7 different updates to different sections within the department. We ended up, some of board members were present for the swearing in ceremony in September, right after Labor Day, for 6 recruits and 1 experienced officer that we hired. Bunch of community events included attending RIGFest in Esquimalt in September. A number of our officers attended the Ridge Meadows RCMP Regimental Funeral for fallen officer Rick O'Brien, and that was on October 4th. On October 24th, a number of board members were present for the swearing in of our occupational stress intervention dog, Daisy, which I'll work with Colette, and we'll get, for those that didn't get a chance to meet Daisy, we'll get the primary handler, Matt King, here, and you can ask him a few questions about how Daisy has transitioned here. What a welcome she's been at the PB. I'll do that in December or January. I'll work with Colette on that. The last thing I'll just kind of touch on is on November the 10th. So just before Remembrance Day, had the privilege of attending the recruit graduation ceremony. So 5 new police recruits graduated, and of note was Constable Sarah Kaufman. So a class of 64 police recruits. And so Sarah Kaufman walked away with 2 individual awards. One was for best overall fitness, and the other one was what's known as a Chief Constable's Award. That award is given to the best overall recruit. It's on grades, leadership, attitude, dress and deportment. And so, and of course, for those of us that know Sarah, she's extremely humble, and was very appreciative that she got that personal recognition. I wanted to kind of share that forward. I did share that on X just after the graduation ceremony to celebrate her achievements. That's it for the written report. I do have one other update for the board, and that is something that we put out a media release around the retail theft project that we did. And so I wanted to just share with you, this was done about almost 3.5 weeks ago. And so it was initiated by our frontline patrol division officers, and they work with loss prevention staff, and they're in Laura Johnson, one business, and it just goes to show you how prevalent these thefts are and how brazen they are. In a 3-day project, 20 individuals arrested and recovered over $25,000 in stolen merchandise. It's more than half of the suspects that were arrested had over $1,000 worth of merchandise. People are not just walking in and grabbing a t-shirt or a pair of socks and walking out, they're loading up. In fact, one person was in possession of $3,400 worth of stolen merchandise. So just extremely pleased. This was initiated at the ground level from our frontline folks on a project on a need, request by our business community on the retail theft issue, and we are doing everything we can again to work and proactively put mechanisms in place for businesses to make sure that they are curbing retail theft. One of the bigger issues, I think that's the elephant in the room that gets talked about, is the criminal justice system and the lack of penalties. In fact, in one case, an individual on day 1 or day 2 had stolen, was released, and was back on day 3 of the project and was rearrested, and at that point was held in custody. So it just goes to show how really bad it is, and we're doing everything that we can, again, working with the criminal justice system and working with loss prevention and working with businesses to try to limit the amount of merchandise that is stolen. That's the update that I have. I can wait for questions, Chair, or I can move into the EDI update.
Before you do that, actually, I just do have a question which you touched on a little bit. And first, let me say I know very much that downtown businesses appreciate that attention, not just through the organization and the Victoria Business Association, but individually as well. So thank you for that. But I wonder if you wanted to just riff a bit more on what happens when you do have the quote success in being able to identify and apprehend those folks accused. What happens then? What is the threshold? You mentioned that for one person, subsequent arrest meant that they could be held. So what's the threshold? What observations do you have about the barriers there?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is part of the Bail Reform Act, which is before federal legislation, and we're looking at it. A lot of focus is going on repeat violent offenders, and so retail theft is not really considered violence unless somebody. We, as Canadian Chiefs of Police, are really trying to advocate government to say that it should be repeat offenders, not necessarily violent offenders, because they're having just as much of an impact as you can tell on just public confidence in the criminal justice system. I know that we can't hold everyone, but the threshold is extremely low. The default is to release and not to hold people in custody. And so we are literally arresting people, whether it's drug traffickers, whether it's people for repeat offenders even on property that have 30, 40 convictions. And some are more serious convictions for robbery and aggravated assault and whatnot, and so long history of people that are known criminals, but there's very little deterrence and there's very little consequences to them. So those are just some of the challenges that we face. If you recall, there was a retail theft ring that was operating that was extremely sophisticated. And so clothing is turned in, at a quarter of the cost for money for drugs. But it's actually, this is far more coordinated and led sometimes by organized crime for the illicit drug trade. So those are kind of links that we have, and we're doing everything that we can to again give businesses and the store owners confidence that the police are there. But many of them are literally losing their shirt every single day and every single week. It shows that. And again, we get 3 days, one location, and you can see the results.
Thank you for that, appreciate it. All right, why don't you move on to your EDI and then see if there are any questions in general.
So the EDI is just on the back of that page of your package, might be on page 20. And so, yeah, I was able to attend, and many board members also attended the Indigenous healing ceremony that we had. I virtually attended the BC Muslim Association Board of Directors meeting. In addition to that, on October 20th, I was at the masjid to meet with community members and discuss some community safety concerns around Islamophobia with what had happened in early October in the Middle East. Served Thanksgiving lunch at Our Place Society. Myself and a number of Vic PD members attended the National Day on Truth and Reconciliation and attended the activities there. I saw you there. I know that Deputy Laidman was there. Other Vic PD members were also there on that day. And we continue to build our relationships with the Indigenous street family. And so that is done to the Aboriginal Coalition Against Homelessness. And we had an opportunity to bring the group together along with Vic PD members and go watch a movie matinee. So those are always well received to build those positive relationships. Myself, Deputy Lay. I ended up meeting with Rabbi Kaplan at the Shabbat Center. I got a phone call from the Khalsa Diwan Society that the Consulate General of India was here, and they asked if I would want to meet him. And that was just a spur of the moment visit that happened on a Saturday around Diwali. So then I ended up coming in for that and met them up at the Gurdwara. And then a number of us attended the commemoration of Krishna at the congregation. So lots of engagement over the last number of.
John, you said you had a question on one of the chief's reports.
It's all good now.
Any comments or questions on the chief's reports? None, thank you very much for that, Chief. Always welcome. Yes, very good, yes.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief, for the report. I'm just wondering whether from the EDI section and also the other community engagement sections, are there any themes that are standing out for you that maybe we should be aware of, and be that you're excited about or seeing that they're doing some effective work?
I just missed the first part of your question, Tim.
Any themes that you're seeing coming out through all of the
respect that our officers have. I get regularly approached in all of my engagement on not just from the Muslim community or the different ethnic or diverse communities that I'm attending, but generally at public events. People are extremely pleased with the engagement of our officers, the personal connections. Sometimes they have the name or the badge number. Many times they don't, because they were walking. They weren't even a part of the interaction, but they saw the officer interacting in what was a very difficult interaction where somebody was non-compliant, and they're impressed. Sometimes the officer knew that person by their first name, their ability for compassion and to be able to help people, and be extremely kind and compassionate. So I hear that is a general theme that I normally will hear. Not a lot of complaints and the only complaint I generally hear is not enough officers. We'd like to see more officers visible in the community, so that's the other thing. But it's heartwarming to hear kind of that our officers are engaged in the community and the impact that they're having.
Any question, any answer? Anything else from the chief? Okay, seeing none, that moves us through our standing items, and so we're on to new business. We have 4 items here. First up, the development of a board engagement strategy. And Michaela, that's over to you.
Thank you. Basically, we need one. We need to develop a board engagement strategy. I think this has started sort of rumbling around midsummer for me, especially when we had the new committee chairs put into place. And we started talking more and having more conversations. And one of the first questions that came up from the new committee chairs to me in our conversations was, how do we engage with X, Y, and Z, and when do we engage with X, Y, and Z? And this was sort of happening more and more, and people were having their own conversations in committees and in smaller groups about when and how we should be engaging with the community and with different groups. Obviously, this has come up a lot with Elizabeth and the finance committee, and doing a little bit of sort of small time engagement to start this year, if we can call it that, with a plan to make a more robust strategy. And then when I started taking the Watson program, they really talk a lot about board engagement, and it was sort of made clear. I don't think they give us this stuff, but I did screenshots and stuff. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, about what they're suggesting that boards do and questions that they ask in terms of engagement. So I talked to both the co-chairs about this, and I had a chat with Del and Cheryl about this also. And I think that we need to develop a strategy, but it's not really clear how people would like to do that. So I think that's the point of bringing this forward now. Do we want to have a new committee, a working group? Do we want to give this to Paul? What would we like to do to build that? Because I think it's very timely. And I do have these sort of more detailed questions and things in groups from Watson and from my discussion, but I think it's a bit premature to start talking about that and just wanting to bring forward how the board would like to build one.
You're looking for some advice or suggestions on a process?
Yeah,
Mechanism.
and a next step. I think I'd like to leave here with a next step.
Thanks for that, Michaela. Does anyone have any ideas about next steps? Michaela, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I don't know that I've got an idea about next steps, but I'm really happy to have you bring this forward because as I think most of the board knows, I've been thinking about how do we next year for the budget improve upon what we've done this year. It was very ad hoc this year because I was new, and we were just kind of trying to do what we could in the limited time. But I have said in a number of public meetings that I would like to see us develop a more robust consultation process around the budget. But that shouldn't be done in isolation of what we're doing engaging communities, because there's no point in having two entirely separate processes. So I'm in full support of having something. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I hope that we get on with it, because I think that starting sometime in January, I'm going to be thinking about the 2025 budget. And so the committee will have to be thinking about it. We've got to start dovetailing this engagement at that point.
Michaela, I'm wondering, do you have thoughts about how you would like to begin?
No, not necessarily, but I think that it is important to do it at least at the starting point as a group, because we need to get, everybody has had different ideas of where they think the engagement is important. And obviously there's a lot of overlap, but some people are talking about the union. You've mentioned multiple times figuring out a way to bring more people to public meetings. It's, it sort of goes through the different the different committees. It is definitely something that needs to be talked about as a group to start. And then I don't know is the answer. I've never seen, while I've been on this board, the creation of a new committee. There's been some sort of smaller subcommittees, special committees maybe, if you will, that have dealt with an issue. So I don't know if it necessitates a new committee or just some people to put their hands up and say, I will be the leader of this. And I will be the leader of this, but I don't care about that. I don't need to own this. I just wanted to bring the conversation forward.
Well, I hear volunteer. And so perhaps we would be able to think about, Michaela, you taking some steps around facilitating some of those conversations to start, and bringing perhaps just a sketch, perhaps back to the board meeting, either the next one or the one after, And we can then start to use this as a tool to generate that discussion. Del, did you wanna add something?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. In the meeting that we had with Michaela, you've got a board member, Shona Huber, who is a
Yes.
communications expert. And I was willing to, and Cheryl had some really good thoughts on what a strategy may look like. So just also having Cheryl maybe sit with the board and provide some guidance. It's still the board's engagement strategy, but that might be helpful, and I'm certainly willing to put Cheryl's name forward to kind of help at least guide or provide some context to what may or may not work for the board's putting together.
So Michaela, I'm wondering, it sounds like there might be a preliminary step that perhaps you and Charlotte, who's not with us today, and Cheryl maybe have a preliminary conversation to sugar on a few ideas that comes back from the board? Or would you rather set a time at a board meeting for all of us to have that first step?
No, that seems fine to me, and I would maybe say that I'm not certain that Charlotte wants to do that. She happened to be here and she joined in, so I would wanna check in with her before. It seems like Cheryl has been volunteered to participate with me, but I would just wanna check in with Charlotte, and I think that's useful. And I do have a bit of a structure just from this Watson stuff that I can bring forward, and I think it would be fine to bring it up at the next meeting, just so that we have a little bit of momentum, and then maybe that is the time that we figure out sort of more clearly what to do with it. But I think it is important that it's very intentional and that it is planned, so that we get the benefit of it for the board and we don't step on toes and so on.
And also so we don't reinvent the wheel. Oh, you have what?
Yeah, and I thank Michaela for kind of leading the conversation on it. I mean, I think it should be looked at it from a board perspective. I think, finance is gonna wanna have a view for consultation, obviously under that topic, and governance may have some. I'm looking at the toolkit coming out of the training that Michaela, you and I took, and there is actually a document called Your Community, which I think would be very good, and it is kind of doing an assessment of who is in our world. And I think that would be a good exercise just to try to figure out, rights holders, the public, community organizations, business groups, and trying to just define who's out there.
Yeah.
And I think, I thank you in advance, you and Cheryl and who else, for the work that you're gonna do, and I think we should have a discussion at a later board meeting and carve that off, so thank you.
And then Michaela, perhaps what we could do to move this forward is leave it with you to connect with whoever else on the board is interested in joining you with the help of Cheryl, if you're being voluntold. And to come back at a future meeting with some proposals that we can then begin to actually put some detail on.
That's great, thank you very much.
Do you need a motion or is that sufficient direction?
I think that's sufficient for me.
Anyone else need to move further with that? We empower you to come back with things. Okay. All right, moving on then to the next item under new business, this is the PD mental health and wellness strategy update sheet.
Sure, yeah. So the document is in your package on page 21. I wanted to share with the board that we do have this action plan, and it really talks about our focus, our commitment, it talks about our approach, and it's got action items listed. It is both internal facing and external facing when it comes to mental health and wellness, and what our approach is when it comes to our outreach efforts, but also internally how we're supporting our people who are exposed to high levels of trauma, between when you look at this frequency and severity of some of the trauma that they're exposed to. And so I wanted to give the board some level of comfort that this is something that we look at. The action plan is a living document. Yes, it goes for a couple years up until 2025, but it is something that we look at regularly and update regularly on any gaps that we see, again, whether it's internally of improving our supports for our people, or whether it's externally, for example, supporting the peer assisted care team to the Canadian Mental Health Association, or launching our co-response team that we did earlier this year. So it kind of is a real good snapshot for the board to see what we have in place and what we're doing as an organization.
Great, this is very interesting, very comprehensive. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I just have a question. Under focus on employee wellness number 6 in your chart here, it talks about continuing the work of the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Could you just tell me a little bit more about that committee?
Sure, yeah, I can do that. I'm going to turn to Deputy Chief Jason Laidman, who's been overseeing that as part of the committee, to provide an update.
Perfect, thank you. We are in the middle of working with a contractor right now to outline what our strategic priorities and objectives for the internal committee will be. We've most recently put on another call for people, and I think we have 6 or 7 new members we're in and around 15 or 16 members, actually. It's a 20. It's a very engaged group. We have been together for about a year and a half. We've hit a couple stumbling blocks finding the right contractor within the right budget parameters to try and get sort of help along what kind of strategies that we're going to have. So that's been set up. We've had one meeting with the contractor. We've got another one for the other half of the EDI committee. I think it's next week again, and then we're going to chart our path forward. So it's actually quite we have a co-chair environment there in this committee. One's a sworn member and one is a civilian member, and everyone's very engaged and committed. Some of the work that they do includes looking at proposed changes to our internal promotion process, or proposed changes to some of our policies that we did. For example, the respectful workplace policy went through the subcommittee of the EDI committee. And granted, they're looking through it with a lens that we actually don't have a strategy necessarily for yet, but they've done some fantastic work. And in fact, the latest inspector competition went through the EDI subcommittee as well, and we had some great suggestions come back on that. So we're weaving EDI into the policing culture through this committee. This committee is going to be, in my mind, going to become that much more engaged, that much more popular to be a part of, quite frankly, so that we can actually continue to spread that good word. I'm excited about the committee. It's awesome.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, is the union involved?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry, Aaron. Both of you.
Important to remember that, yes, right. Any other questions on the mental health and wellness strategy updates? Okay, thank you very much. That takes us on to the division action plan update. Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Chair. So this is on page 29 of 37. And this is kind of a regular update that we provide the board. This really is an update on our strategic plan. So that this is something that's of interest to the board. I'm sure that's in your Watson training about what initiatives and level of accountability from your senior leadership as to advancing actions and furthering our vision, which is a safer community together. And so we have we are in a bit of a transition. Like you were using a platform called Cascade, and it really was not a good reporting tool. And so we're actually in the middle of working with IT and Dan and his team in having a better product to be able to report out to you on a regular basis. But because we haven't given you an update in a while, what we decided to do was give you our divisional action plan updates under each senior leader, divided under our 3 goals. So our first one is supporting community safety, second one is enhancing public trust, and the third one is achieving organizational excellence. And so you'll be able to look at each division, and there's more than one that we're leading. For simplicity's sake, I didn't want to give you a 50-page document. What we thought what was relevant to the board and what the public would want to see is we picked out one kind of area under each of the goals, under each divisional manager, and provided you with an update. And again, to give you a level of confidence that we continue to advance on our strategic plan priorities.
Questions, comments on that? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
On the Office of the Deputy Chief Constables, enhancing public trust, respectful workplace policy. So at a previous meeting, and I can't remember who this was, I did raise a question about what the process was for safe reporting of incidents, particularly I'm thinking about incidents where the person who has some kind of issue that they want to report doesn't feel safe reporting it. And I don't need to dwell on that tonight, but I would like to see some information on that come back to us at a subsequent meeting so that I understand that process a bit better.
Yeah, I was gonna recommend, just based on that comment, this could be something we could add under the HR committee meeting, and we could just kind of walk the board through. I can tell you right now, having read the policy, having being a part of developing the policy with our senior leadership team. I'm extremely confident that the board's gonna be pleased because we've actually added a number of avenues on reporting to reduce that hesitation or making sure that there's multiple avenues at a lower level to actually deal with issues that maybe haven't reached to the point where they're bullying or harassment, but allowing people an opportunity to resolve workplace issues rather than before we gotta ring the bell and then everyone, there's a level of apprehension for whistleblowers and of coming forward for fear of apprehension.
It'd be great to have it be HR committee.
I'll make sure Clet's got it over that. We'll bring it up to HR.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the action plan update? So none, that takes us to the last item of new business. And Elizabeth, you had added something to do with women and the strategy.
Yeah,
between women
I'm
and
sure
business.
everybody saw that news story that I'm referring to. It was really exciting to see all those women photographed there and to hear a little bit more about it. So I was just curious. I thought, okay, so what are we doing about advancing women in the police force and in a similar way? Are we doing something that I should know and be really proud of, or are we working on something? I guess that's really where I'm going with this.
How's our recruitment strategy? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, it's going extremely well. I'll share with the board that for the new recruits hired in the calendar year 2023, 38% of our new recruits were women. So that's I think overall we have about 25% of our on the police side, significantly higher on the civilian side, but on the police officer side, we've got 25% of our police officers are women, this is above the national the national standard of what is out there across the country. We continue to actively recruit and make it a place for women to want to kind of come join Vic PD. And I'm actually gonna ask Cheryl to talk about a couple steps. We recently went out and did some outreach efforts, and I know that Cheryl's got some updates just literally from last week, I think, or last 2 weeks. And maybe if you want to talk about POPAD, and Chris, I'll ask if there's anything that we didn't cover, if you want to maybe touch on it.
Yeah, so employee attraction now falls under CED, and so we've been really putting some efforts in, and we sent a couple of people out to do presentations in Nanaimo and Courtney last week, and we offered female-only sub-sessions for anyone who identifies as female to participate in. So Constable Terry Healy spoke directly one-on-one, had some interesting conversations, so that everybody had a safe space to ask the questions they might want to ask in a larger group. She came back and said those went really well. She had some really good discussions there. She was also able to share that there are some initiatives through HR specifically around coaching and mentoring women through POPAD initiatives. And I think that Constable Terry Healy is also a great example of, a female officer who may in stature look like she might not be necessarily what you first think of when you think of a police officer, but she's a great example, and I know she'd be happy to run anybody through that physical fitness test. So she's a great spokesperson and example for women who are thinking about becoming police officers. So I think those are a couple of initiatives there. Just offering those women-only sub-sessions. We're also very active and engaged on social media when we are doing these advertisements and responding to questions, especially from women, because we do get some in there about what it's like to be a female, and we say we'd be happy to set up some conversations there, hear what it's like to be female here at Vic PD and some of the experiences. I think there's some really great initiatives that have been happening that make it more attractive for women as well.
Yeah, I need that.
No, Cheryl, I think you touched on everything there, particularly in addition to the coaching and mentoring for the POPAD. That's we're already seeing some really positive results from that. So I think it's just adding to what we've just recently done for outreach.
Yeah, and the final thing that I would say is, Deputy, I'll come to you in case you've got something there. One other thing I wanted to comment on is we really do look at our reserve program quite heavily. It is really an opportunity for individuals to see how the police department is, fit into the culture of the organization, really through volunteerism, see what the organization has to offer. But on the same token, it allows us to look at individuals and see who's excelling, see who's got the motivation and the drive And we're also able to mentor individuals that we see that are just on the cusp, but they may need a little bit of mentorship to help them in a particular area. It could be interviewing, it could be writing an exam, it could be the physical test. But we are extremely, really ensuring that we have a good representation of women in our reserve program, because that again is a stepping ground into the police department in many ways, not the only way, but in many ways it is. So those are also really good opportunities, including police camp. They're now recruiting for a police camp year 2. And there's always a wide, diverse group of students that come into police camp. And we do know traditionally those youth and students that go into police camp, which is an 8-day camp, and they learn about leadership, they learn about motivation, and learn a lot about themselves, and also about the role of police in community and what police have to offer. Many of the graduates from police camp are officers throughout, whether it's the RCMP, VIC-PD, or other police departments, and we know that it's a successful program. So we're making sure that we're giving those opportunities to many of our youth, including our diverse youth and many young women, to give those opportunities and introduce them to the profession.
Thanks, Chief, and I'll just highlight a couple more points on this. I mean, with Chris and Cheryl's divisions, we're sort of rewriting, what does the advertising for this policing career look like? Like, what does a police officer do day to day? And is it what you're seeing through social media, or is it what is the reality? So Cheryl's shop is in charge of that. And I know, Chief, you guys talk, the chiefs talk about it at the Canadian policing level, is rewriting sort of that policing culture. What kind of police officers do we want now? To further your question, we should actually be talking about diversity as well. And we're certainly, I don't have the stats on the diversity, but we're trending to the chief and to the point where, 25-26% of our members are female, 38% 2023 higher, but our special municipal constable and special municipal constable auxiliary program, we're at 42%. So we're actually trending what's coming in the door, where we're looking at sort of, like to call it the longest interview ever of our SMCs. And I'm sorry, I don't have the stats for the reserves, but we're definitely trending the right way. So we should be pretty proud of the work we're doing.
Yes, Elizabeth?
That's great. That's what I have to do.
All right, I think, go ahead, Tim, yes?
I just had a question. You mentioned the ProPad, and I think that is the fitness training. Has that been the biggest barrier for women?
I don't have the answer. I would turn that over to you.
Yeah, I think it can be a stumbling block a little bit. I can tell you that the BC chiefs, the municipal chiefs, recently there was a review done on this. So the acronym is Police Officers Physical Abilities Test. POPAT is the acronym for it. And they're looking at the efficacy of the test, looking at if it's quantified kind of practices of when the test was developed. We had a presentation actually at the BC Chiefs meeting that the Police Academy is actually looking at the test. It was developed 35 years ago, probably longer than 35 years ago. But what we did is part of that test, you have to jump over a 6-foot mat. We have not really seen why it has to be a 6-foot mat. For many of the people that are small statured, men and women, 6 feet can be a significant jump when you're running a circuit for the test, and that's now been reduced to 5 feet to overcome what we thought maybe was a potential barrier for people. But I think that a lot of people, I'm gonna ask Chris if you have anything to add to this. There's a lot of steps to get into the police department, and we wanna make sure that we're hiring the best of the best. So it doesn't matter what the background of the recruit is, doesn't matter their gender, their ethnicity, or anything like that. You have to have shown a commitment to your community. You have to have a kind of a demonstrated ability to problem solve, have strong interpersonal skills, and be able to lead with care and compassion. And a level of maturity is needed. So at different stages through it, some people struggle through the interview, the ability to express themselves. We are making sure that our panels are diverse. So making sure that people feel comfortable sitting and doing the panel interviews, but we actually are providing more mentorship and guidance, not just for the physical test, but also in learning how to do a proper interview, how to express yourself and doing that. We're offering that to everyone.
I think the POPAT has been a barrier, but we've got processes in place now to mentor for that. There's a strategy behind it. So, and it's not just always you know, particularly a small female. I've seen it a large male also struggle with it. So we do have, in the same way that we have things put in place for interviewing, coaching, we have internal coaching and mentoring. We also offer go out and go to this person and get some assistance. So I think wherever we're seeing some struggles, we're looking at why that's there, and if it's our processes, we're trying to adjust and assist. But I also agree that with Del that it's a multiple step process, and we are looking for people who also have satisfied a lot of different steps and are you know, the right fit for a career in policing. So resiliency, looking at all of those things. The POPAT's in a way, it's an easy one to address because it's physical. So what can we do to address that? And as Cheryl pointed out, Terry Healy is a great example of someone who, well, we've got someone that's an example of someone that knew the strategy, knew how to get through it. So we use that to our advantage.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing this up. I just saw the news article as well, where Saanich is achievement. So do we as department have internal metric percentage? Saanich was very proudly saying 30% by 2030. That's what we're gonna achieve. They achieved it by 2023. Do we as department have an internal goal with the various committees of a number? And is that figure number gonna be shared at some point to the public so they know that we are driving? You said 38% of new recruits, which is great, and then we have 25% currently. 25%, is that civilian and non-civilian?
No, that's just uniforms.
That's just
We're
uniform.
much higher when you look at civilian.
Yeah, okay, great, so 25%. So I guess what my words, how do you get from 25, how do you get to 38% you're recruiting into a higher portion of 25% you already have? And what is that number? Is it 20, 30 percentages? Do we follow that model? Or do we strive for a greater number because of environment or demographics? So I'm curious if you would help answer that.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think we're always trying to achieve and hire the best of the best that we have. Our goal at the Victoria Police Department is to make sure that our police department is reflective, broadly reflective of the community, of all our community. And that includes 2S plus LGBTQ. That includes diverse members, that includes gender diverse, all sorts of things. I have been a little hesitant to put numbers and quotas on there. Being somebody that's a visible minority, I can see the harm that can also be done for that. But make no mistake about it, and this is something that we can talk about at the HR committee, about what are the efforts that we are making. Our goal is to hire the best of the best, again, and make sure that our organization is diverse. That's what our communities want. They want to see themselves reflected in the police officers that are serving them, and that's certainly a priority for us. And so I've always, achieve for excellence, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a quota or a number, which can also it could be a double-edged sword and have a negative consequence to it. And I applaud other agencies that have chosen to do that, but I know that we are well on our way to achieving probably even greater objectives. Like, why set that bar at a number? Who says you can't even surpass whatever number that you set? So I think it's the mindset that we have here at Vic PD, and certainly Chris taking over in HR as the new HR director. Those will be really good discussions that we will be having with her, and she'll have her views, which she's literally just getting there. But I'm sure she'll be able to share what her thoughts are on this in the months ahead.
Just one final comment there for the chief. I mean, I totally agree that we should be hiring the best of the best. And I don't like quotas either because they become artificial. So I guess what I'm trying to probe at is, are we confident that our criteria of the best doesn't provide a barrier to certain groups, whether it's women or various ethnic groups, people with different diverse backgrounds, whatever. So that's the information that I think we probably want to get in our HR committee is how confident are we that we don't have artificial barriers? I think about the physical one that, like, did you say it was 35 years ago that it was established? I mean, I could just imagine that those standards at that point were not designed for smaller people and definitely not for women. So we've adjusted them so that the job can still be done by that individual. That's important. But that goes for a lot of other criteria. So I'm not questioning whether we have that. I just want some confirmation that, yeah, we're thinking about that all the time and we've been making adjustments as we move forward.
Perhaps that's something that, as you mentioned, can be a feature of the HR committee's conversation, so I think the information that you're seeking is of interest to the public too. And so for us to be able to showcase just the statistics you've shared already, I think are quite surprising to lots of people. But being able to sort of continually provide that type of confirmation, I think will go far to answering not just your question, but questions of the public. So, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just that fact that I wanna give the board confidence that we are continually looking at our process. We're looking at barriers, not just on the physical part of it, but other barriers that we may have. This is what the deputy talked about. Our EDI committee is looking at our process. We're looking at our promotional process. We're looking at career path guidelines. We just looked at the inspector process. So what is it that we do not know? We're getting some external guidance in this area. Because I may not necessarily know what's best as a serving police officer, somebody who's been in policing for many, many years. But we're bringing in experts outside looking at it. And even we've got a new sergeant that just took over as a recruiting sergeant, Sergeant Benny Gill. And I can tell you, he's already made a couple recommendations to Chris and the HR director to eliminate some of the redundancy that was there to speed the process along and help that process and streamline it. So there's really good positive things. And I think at a future meeting, maybe at the HR committee, we can walk you through what some of those changes are to kind of give you that confidence.
Thank you for that question. It generated a great discussion. That does actually take us to the end of our regular agenda for the public portion. So is there anything else that anyone would like to add at this point? Well timed with 1 minute left on our agenda. All right, we'll take a motion to adjourn. And for those of you folks who are part of the previous meeting, we do have a little bit more work to just